Good evening, everyone, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. We have a busy hour to go tonight with a lot of different subjects. We begin this evening with some breaking news, and it's on the corruption front. A federal jury has just found guilty of all counts here, the defendants in the Buffalo Billion corruption trial. The case involved bid rigging on a huge redevelopment project in the state of New York. Dominic Carter, of course, has been live in front of the federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan. He joins us with the very latest. And Dom, it was bad news for all defendants on all charges.
Indeed, Richard, that is the case. But not only for the defendants that were charged, this was a very bad day for the governor of New York State, Andrew Cuomo. We'll get to that and explain why in just a minute. Federal Judge Valerie Caproni has set October, 4 different dates for sentencing, Richard, in the Buffalo Billion case. The attorney for the main defendant, Elaine Kelly-Aros, explained the verdict this way, mentioning Governor Cuomo.
All I can tell you is we are absolutely heartsick. Elaine Kelly-Aros is a good man. He was asked by the governor to go out to Buffalo to try and make the Albany miracle a reality in Buffalo. Great contractors were hired. Really good work was done on important projects. And you know, not a penny was lost by the state. We are profoundly disappointed with the verdict.
All 4 defendants found guilty of secretly rigging the bids for the so-called Buffalo Billion, an $850 million stimulus package for Buffalo and Syracuse. Kelly-Aros wouldn't comment, nor the other defendants, Stephen Aiello or Louis Simonelli. Any reaction? Any reaction? Is this a sign of the times in terms of with juries that they're not buying anything that defendants have to say?
Yeah, it's not a good time to be trying a case, a public corruption case. I'm not going to criticize the jury. I don't like the verdict, obviously, so to that extent I would criticize them. I think they were wrong, but these aren't the best of times to try a case.
So, Richard, here's officially why it's a bad day for Governor Cuomo. Those 4 defendants that have been convicted now and will be sentenced to felonies by federal judge Valerie Caproni, the same judge that handled the case for Cuomo's right-hand man, Joe Percoco. Those defendants, Richard, gave major campaign contributions to the governor. So people like me and you will be camped out asking the governor question for days about corruption in New York State. The governor that has promised, Richard, to clean things up. So 4 defendants guilty on every single count. Richard?
Dominic, not only the counselors seem surprised by the verdict, but also people who followed this. Were you surprised on all charges, all defendants found guilty? Because I know some people thought that there might have been some holes in the prosecution's case.
Indeed, Richard, and to your point, there was even a question of whether or not this case should have been tried in this jurisdiction. We're talking about $850 million, as I said earlier, in economic stimulus money for Syracuse and Buffalo. There are some that have pointed out, to your point, Richard, why wasn't this case tried in federal courtrooms upstate? Whether or not the Southern District had custody of this case. But ultimately, they did try the case, and it's funny, Richard, because at one point, Judge Caproni hinted that she might throw this case out, but it didn't ultimately come to that. One of the defendants that we mentioned, Stephen Aiello, a very bad day for him. He was convicted along with Percoco of conspiracy in the Percoco case, and now, Richard, he's convicted as well in the Buffalo Billion case.
In the Buffalo Billion case, Dominic, was it a cumulative effect of the evidence that was laid out, or was there one smoking gun that led to the verdict we got today?
Excellent question here. Keep in mind, Simonelli, the company LP Simonelli. The problem here is that the star witness for the government flipped, was a senior executive at Simonelli up in Buffalo, Richard, and claimed that he personally rigged the bids on these state contracts and that Dr. Kelly-Aros was involved. Now, you had a situation, Richard, where the request for proposals, something you're very familiar with in terms of if you're interested in doing business with the state, you have to submit a request for proposal. Well, the feds claimed that this was stacked for to build a solar plant, a plant up in Buffalo, where it required, this was one of the red flags for the feds, it required, Richard, that the developer had to have 50 years of experience. And so guess what? How long the Simonelli Company has been in business? For more than 50 years. So that was one of the red flags to the feds, and that's why they brought this case.
Well, it's been a busy few weeks where you're located on that block, not just in the courtroom you were in today. Also, you and the team there, they've been covering the Skelos retrial, again, on the same block, same courthouse. What happened today? Where are we with that case?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, Richard. I have never seen anything like this before in my life. 30 years of political reporting, and I have never covered, to show you, perhaps it's a sign of the times that we live in, two, not one, two federal corruption cases on the same floor of the courthouse right behind me, the 26th floor. One common denominator, actually two common denominators, the judges, Kimber Wood and Valerie Caproni. All of these recent cases with all of these different defendants, Richard, especially like Skelos, which we're about to talk about right now, involves either one of those judges, Kimber Wood or the other judge, Valerie Caproni. And so Mr. Skelos, his case, Richard, is going to the jury tomorrow. Prosecutors charged the companies involved were targets of what they call the Skelos family shakedown to deliver consultant work and alleged no-show jobs for the son of Dean Skelos, Adam. In their final rebuttal, the feds told the jury, quote, those powerful, wealthy businessmen had to kiss the ring whenever Dean Skelos called. Mr. Skelos, what's been going through your mind the last month during this retrial?
Well, you know, obviously, I'm looking forward to an acquittal. You know, I know that I've done nothing criminal. I know my son has not done anything criminal, and that's what I'm waiting for.
The initial conviction for Dean and Adam Skelos was overturned when the Supreme Court narrowed the definition of political corruption, requiring an official act of the elected official. Federal Judge Kimber Wood was the judge at the first trial and also this time around. She told the jury, quote, you are the sole judges of the facts. That's a great responsibility. Size a person up just like you would in any important matter. And also, it is for you, the jury, to decide the credibility of the witnesses and the weight their testimony deserves. What has been the impact of these last two trials on your family?
It's destroyed our family, both financially and just
physically, mentally.
So, Richard, the times we live in, Judge Wood, Kimber Wood, she will finish in terms of directing the jury tomorrow on the legality of the law. And so we're done with the Buffalo Billion, but guess what? Dean Skelos goes to the jury tomorrow before lunch, Richard. Let's go back to you in the studio.
Tom, great job. Thank you so much. And of course, we're going to be checking back in tomorrow with the Skelos retrial as they get to the jury. All right, when we come back, it was a busy day across the pond, if you will. We're going to fact check our president again. What he said to our NATO allies and about NATO itself is getting a ton of deserved attention, and again, for all the wrong reasons.